David Marcus, the co-founder and CEO of LightSpark. And I'm joined today by Daniel McCabe from Flexa, who's the CEO of Flexa, and Jamie Yeager from Incomm. So why don't you just start by introducing yourselves and just describing a little bit what your respective companies do, and I'll reciprocate after.
That's great. Jamie, you want to kick it off?
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. Jamie Yeager. I lead global business development for Incomm Payments. Incomm Payments is a privately held 30-year-old company that enables many different technologies between payment partners and retailers. So think about gift cards and how you go and buy an iTunes card, maybe at a CVS or a Walmart. Our core technology enables those sort of transactions with a number of other financial service transactions stacking on top of those connections.
Great. I'll hop in. This is Danny McCabe. I'm the current CEO of Flexa. I started off as our general counsel and really focused on the legal and compliance side of the foundational construction of what Flexa is today. Then moved on to COO and now CEO of the company. And what we're focused on today is the very thing we were focused on back in 2018 when we founded, which is to make digital asset payments available everywhere, any wallet, any asset for any merchant.
Awesome. Well, I'm David Marcus, and I'm here to speak for LightSpark, which is building enterprise-grade Lightning solutions to enable fast, real-time, and cheap Bitcoin payments, and other forms of payments through UMA as well that we might touch on. Why don't we kick things off with both of you? And maybe you can share, what was the moment that really started that journey for both of you to work on digital currency payments, and what are the opportunities that you see for digital currency payments going forward?
Sure.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, for us here at Incom, we really spend a lot of time thinking about innovation. It's always been a core focus for us. I would kind of pinpoint to around 3 years ago when Bitcoin was on a run. Lots of cryptocurrencies were getting a lot of media attention. Merchants started to notice, and there was enough attention and enough talk, enough buzz that merchants started asking us as a payment provider kind of what our opinion on crypto and blockchain technology was. So we decided to get a quick education on this. We spent several years really kind of digging in and trying to understand what opportunities are out there for the merchants that we serve and what would be most meaningful to them from an activation perspective for these tools. So we connected to Flexa probably 2.5 years ago, and started offering these merchants opportunities to be able to accept a number of digital assets as a payment type. I think we'll talk a little bit more about what that means later and what the benefits of that are. But our innovation was really kind of driven by merchant demand and need, asking what does this mean for them and looking to experts in the space that they work with to try to understand, should they be playing in this, how can they play, and what does it mean for both them as a company and their consumers.
Great. Yeah. And over at the Flexa side of things, for us, when we look at payments today, what we really think we can offer and what we've already built is great cost savings and also really a broader reach for everyone. So when you look at what payments today traditionally cost on credit and debit rails, and I'm sure we'll get into this a bit more later as well, it's astronomical. And one of the things we've fixed is trying to reduce those costs of payments. And we've done so through not only our technology, but what we're offering on a merchant basis across the board. And what we kind of refer to this as internally anyway is the great migration. And what we're thinking is that it's really leaving traditional analog payments that were created 30 years before the internet was invented and building something new and something digital, so folks can actually use internet native asset payments secured by cryptography, which, for merchants is a great cost savings. At Flexa, we are not only trying to reduce costs, by the way, but as we build this and I'm sure we've said this publicly before, we're trying to drive those costs to zero. Like we see a world in which that can happen. And so as a merchant-centric business, we just do that on a day-to-day basis, keep trying to drive those costs lower and lower. And as we do so, making sure we appeal to a broader array of consumers globally.
That's great. And, I think we've all had this moment where we've realized that the status quo of relying on the whole stack of archaic rails that have been stacked on top of one another for over 50 years had to actually go through an evolution of how it supported payments through actually, new form of digital payments and new form of digital currencies on these new rails. And, I think for the audience here, it would be really helpful to talk about a few things. One is really, Danny, if you can talk a little bit about, customer loyalty and digital wallets and proliferation of digital wallets, and then also maybe if you can illustrate, how a typical retail payment like in store would flow from Income to Flexa, and then to us at Lightspark, and how that flow of money would actually work for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think, it's taken what, 6 years of constant building to get here. So, what really started for us as a simple idea that we launched, I believe it was Consensus 2019 with the Spedin app, has now turned into something entirely different. And what we've been focused on over the last couple of years, particularly since we've had a great deal of time to build, given everything that's been going on over the last 2 years, and we continue to do that. What we're really excited for moving forward is how we can take that prior flow we've been working on and change it. And when I say change it, what I really mean is we want to enable every app, really every app, like doing this for developers of apps, so that each app globally can use Flexa in order to enable payments. So what that flow could look like is, pick the app of your choice, and they should be able to integrate with Flexa. One of the things we'll be talking a lot more about in the near future is our SpendKit SDK. And with that SpendKit SDK rollout, the flow then can go from any app through Flexa such that payments can be made. And with Incom, of course, God, they've been such a great partner of ours. And Jamie, I can just say it right now, has been, a great mentor and educator as we've grown with them over the last 2 to 3 years, really educating us on what merchants want and need in these payments. And we all know, I said it before, cost savings is critical. So is that broader reach. We can get more consumers, and we do know we're migrating away from those analog payments. So what Jamie's been able to do is talk to the merchants so we understand what they want and need so we can build that for them. And so the flow really through the current set at Flexa is the point of sale payment, and we can do that with every protocol on every network. So, David, obviously, with Lightning payments, that was something we were wanting to do for a long time. But I'll just be honest, it wasn't until Lightspark really came along with an enterprise grade solution. And obviously, we have the Prime and Connect products from you on the AI side. So, we've really been able to take advantage of that now and really focus more into the Lightning side of things for payments. But again, we look at that as a great opportunity, really, to power payments for merchants and give them that kind of optionality.
I'll add one thing to that, Danny. I think when we think about the merchant infrastructure, you have these big merchants, places that we're all shopping every day, and their point of sale systems are connected to so many different places, right? They reach out to all four of the major networks: Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover. Oftentimes, they're accepting their own private label cards. They take cash, they take checks. And so, if you think of each of these payment types as a different leg that they have to connect to, or a different channel, it's really difficult for merchants to accept new payment types when that represents a big integration for them, right? So not only do digital assets represent a new payment type that these merchants could take, but it represents a lot of unknown. So how does this transact? What does it look like? How does it settle? And a lot of the major benefits of these digital assets are very different than the traditional payment systems by design. They're different to try to make the system better, to make it more immediate, and to make it a lower cost. And so, one of the big benefits and requests that we see from merchants is, hey, I have an interest in exploring this, but this can't be something that's a super major lift for me to put together. It can't be something that's going to take 8 months of dev time. And so together, I think that is one of the ways that we're going to be able to bring this to market faster is using an intermediary like an Incom who has connections to these point of sales and already being connected with someone like Flexa who has a number of asset capabilities on your side. It almost becomes this Rosetta Stone for the merchants to read these digital assets in a format and translation that their point of sale systems understand without having to do a lot of retraining.
Yeah, that's a real key thing here. It's kind of interesting because in digital payments for digital currencies, whether it's Bitcoin or stable coins or anything else, there's always that interesting fantasy of like, when am I going to be able to buy my espresso or my coffee with Bitcoin or with stable coins or with any of the other assets? And it turns out that actually that part of the ecosystem, getting to the retail payments and actually getting that experience to be what it needs to be, is the hardest thing to do versus purely digital payments, etc. And both your companies are actually pushing to make this happen at scale, which is really interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about why this is so hard? I mean, I think Jamie, you touched a little bit on it, like in terms of like how hard it is to integrate new payment types into payment terminals, the training and everything that people need to go through to accept a new payment type when time to complete a payment is actually really critical in retail settings, etc. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the challenges and how you're going around that, both of you?
Yeah, I think some of the main challenges that we see are kind of the way that it's always been done, right? This is one of my most hated pieces of feedback that I get when we're talking to people is they say, "Oh, this is how we've always done it. This is how we have to do it." But in the very next breath, merchants are asking for innovation and new things. But the marriage of being able to do those things with existing processes and systems, sometimes people don't know how to break those things apart and really make progress. So I'll just give you a really specific example, right? One of the benefits of being able to take a digital asset is this immediate settlement. And one of the things that Flexa provides is the ability for a merchant to be able to settle in USD, right? So they've understood, okay, we have to speak to this merchant in a way that makes sense to them that they're going to understand. But behind that, there are all these processes and protocols. So credit cards and card type payments, they're settled once a day at the end of the day. So it's very different for them to start to think about what does a real-time settlement look like? What does it look like to get that faster? Does that mean that someone has to be taking in these payments and orders at a faster rate? Does that mean we need more people? And so there's a lot of education, I think, just around talking to these payment providers or these merchants who are accepting payments and who've been doing so the same way for 20 years with very little innovation. How do we help them understand what the personnel infrastructure looks like to accept these, the technology infrastructure to accept these, the compliance and regulatory landscape to accept these? And so it's been a little bit of a road, but I feel like we're starting to make some inroads in having these large merchants understand and really gain interest in evaluating what would change look like. Danny, I don't know if you have anything from your perspective that you would add. You probably have a slightly different view.
No, I think we're pretty aligned. I mean, we look at this as building a bridge to the next era of commerce. We talk about that internally. And how do you do that? How do you best do that? What's difficult about constructing that bridge is that, again, the analog payment system 30 years before the internet. So what are we, 70, 80 years later now? And what you have are these entrenched systems with merchants that they're very used to. Merchant businesses have been built on those systems. So it can take 2, 3, 6 years of still talking to some of the same merchants, multiple meetings, different divisions within those merchant groups. And what you're really doing is not just educating, but learning. And you're working together. So see how you can solve this problem of moving from the old analog system into this new age of digital currency payments. That takes a lot of time and dedication. A lot of things are simply ingrained and accepted that should not be. I mean, we know with traditional payment rails, there's 12, 15, 20 different midpoints where fraud can occur. Flexa eliminates that. We guarantee all of our merchants no loss from fraud, and we can do that because our technology eliminated that. We know that payments, the social cost of payments annually in the US is upwards of $600 billion. We know that. Merchants know that. That's every year. But it's ingrained and it's accepted. It's just how things go. Well, we fixed that problem at Flexa with the help of folks like Incomm. And we can talk to merchants about how we fixed it, but it takes time. So we've really been working, particularly over the last couple of years, as we build out our new product pages, to really educate merchants while we learn from merchants to say what comes next. And we're really excited to think that next is coming soon, 2024, 2025.
That's great. And do you want to talk about, both of you, how the customer response has been, like, just across merchants, and what is really the motivation around enabling digital currency payments in general, across the different merchant types that you both serve?
Yeah, I think I would say that merchant feedback is positive but cautious. I think the merchant landscape right now is in learning mode and trying to understand. I think over the last couple of years, we've all kind of been watching this um, ecosystem and the press it's gotten, the change that we've seen. I think the regulation that's happening is necessary and important. I think that will give merchants comfort um, in having a little bit more visibility and guardrails around this. So I think that we're starting to see, continued openness here. I I honestly think it's going to take a really big merchant to be the first one to do it before we start to see a domino effect. We're seeing this happen in some small ways today. There's, a handful of merchants that are accepting digital assets, like a Microsoft, a Chipotle, Expedia. I think one of the things we've done well in advance of merchants kind of diving in and opening the doors to all these different payments is speaking to the challenges we just talked about over the last few minutes, we've tried to use some constructs that merchants are familiar with today. So we've used the stored value construct in certain cases, particularly some of the fast food restaurants, to allow them through Incom and Flexa to be able to accept these digital currencies, but using a feature or a value that they already recognize. Long term, I don't think we think that's the most efficient way to do it. But I think to be able to get in, do some testing and learning, and we've seen some really strong results. We've seen some merchants promote uh, free items if you pay with digital assets. We see pretty good reaction from the customer base when we see that. And so the more examples of this that we have, I think the more attention we're getting, the more people are open and looking. And I think it's just a matter of finding the right proof of concept for the right merchant at the right time.
Yeah, that's great, Jamie. That's, I'm sure Jamie has a far better perspective on the direct access to what merchants want than Flexa. We still learn a great deal from her. I would add, though, that when we talk with Jamie or with merchants specifically, it does come back to some of the same things we've talked about already. So it started 5, 6 years ago with how is this compliant? How is this legal? So we spent a great deal of time building a legal platform and a compliance team to ensure that we could give confidence to merchants that they can spend through Flexa. Merchants can receive payments through Flexa in a fully compliant way. And for that, boy, that was a lot of work that went into that. And that's some of the boring stuff that goes unseen, but it's critical. When you walk into a merchant office, especially the first time, and they're considering accepting digital currency, they certainly want to know what you've done to make that possible on a compliance and legal side. And we pride ourselves on being able to have that discussion in an open and transparent way so they can see the effort that went into it. You move past that and you start to get into, okay, well, how can this actually help us? And that's where we can start to talk to merchants about the cost again and how we can actually save them money over the long term, especially, but even as fast as today. And then finally, it goes to that audience reach. And right now, a good segment of the population can't get credit or debit cards. We're talking upwards of 20%. So what about them? How do you empower payments for everybody? And that's another thing we're doing at Flex is making sure, if you have a cell phone and you can get an app on that phone, and again, any app with what we're building now, you should be able to make payments at these merchants. There's nothing that should stop you. So when we have that initial conversation with merchants, and we can really show them how we've taken it quite seriously on the legal and compliance side, while at the same time ensuring that they can save money and reach a broader audience, that's a really compelling conversation to have with merchants.
Do you want to briefly touch on, what are the most popular digital currencies that merchants or consumers on the consumer side as well?
Yeah, I can kick that one off. It's still easily Bitcoin. Bitcoin, Ether, USDC. I think those are the top three we see at Flexa, and Bitcoin, I think, by far. And that very well may stay the case. Bitcoin very well may be that internet native token that drives the future. And of course, that's why we're super excited to be working closely with Lightspark. But at Flexa, we're built for a future in which we don't pretend to be certain. We know that there'll be other assets that folks want to spend. In fact, we're convinced that it's inevitable there will be a central bank digital currency at some point in this country. And I don't care what political party you're in, I don't care what your views are on that. Quite frankly, it's inevitable from a technological standpoint. That's how I view it. And so we've built already a system in which those currencies too could be spent through Flexa. So really for us, today it's Bitcoin, Ether, USDC, stablecoins. But for the future, it's, we're prepared for whatever comes, any network, any asset.
Yeah,
I
I'm
agree
sure
with that,
that's.
Danny.
Sorry, Jamie, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say I agree with that. We see a lot of chatter about Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think the assets that people have the most of are the assets that they're going to want to spend. And so when we're talking to merchants, obviously, what's in the news, we'll see pops here and there when something's going crazy. Back in the Dogecoin days, we were getting a lot of requests for that. What's interesting about this space is someone like Flexa being able to pivot so quickly and be able to expand to accept a number of digital currencies. That makes my job a lot easier when I'm talking to merchants, uh, helping them understand how we can't predict the future, but that we're prepared to be able to quickly make changes and pivot. That's something that the traditional payment system, I would say, is not known for, moving quickly and being super agile. And so it's exciting to me to have a payment opportunity that does provide a little bit more agility.
But let me hop in here, David, though, and turn this back to you a little bit. So having said all of that, I think it'd be great to hear from you, your perspective on Lightning payments with respect to Bitcoin retail usage.
Yeah, I mean, look, our view, it's kind of interesting actually that you've been working on this for this long and Bitcoin layer one transaction for an in-store payment is kind of a crazy user experience when you think about it, right? It's like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
submitting a payment and you have to wait for 10 minutes for the next block to actually get your transactions go through and be able to grab your cup of coffee that by the time the payment is complete is actually going to be cold is wasn't like really the right way of doing this. And so it's kind of interesting to hear from you that it took a while for you to decide to do Lightning, and we can talk a little bit about the challenges that you've had when you started looking at implementing Lightning and very self-serving question why you ended up choosing Lightspark. But I think for us it's twofold, right? One is we need to make Bitcoin transactions more efficient, so faster, cheaper, and especially as the price of Bitcoin and the cost of L1 transactions goes up, the the wait times for the next block, the traffic jam is going to increase, and the need for Lightning to enable instant payments in all kinds of different settings is basically going to become not nice to have, but absolutely essential. So we're glad that we have what we believe is the absolute best solution out there to enable large-scale enterprises to enable Lightning transactions for Bitcoin payments. But beyond that, what we're even more excited about is how do we leverage Lightning and Bitcoin as a net neutral settlement asset between all kinds of different parties, and enable consumers and merchants to accept any currency on top of that network, not only Bitcoin. So you could spend
Right.
actual dollars or any other asset and settle on top of Lightning. And that's the journey we started with UMA, which is this universal money address system that we announced late October that we're starting to roll out at scale now. And so we're excited for that phase as well, and excited to be working with all of you on that soon. And I think the combination of enabling people to spend their Bitcoin balances effectively in retail and other settings, and other kinds of balances with any currency they want on top of the Lightning Network is something that we're very excited about.
Yeah, yeah, and I can just answer your question directly. For us with LightSpark, the problem we had pre-LightSpark was reachability, right? So if we can't be confident that the invoice will actually be presented for payment, we can't be confident in the system itself. So with LightSpark, what we found, and by the way, I think we've been integrated for about a year now with LightSpark, and what we have found is reachability has been all but solved. We have full confidence, and especially working with the team, because the team, I've said this before, the team you have, David, is just an all-star group of professionals, and it's a pleasure to work with them. And I think, though, that goes to the reason why when we started working in El Salvador with Lightning payments and we had some issues, we looked to what you had built, specifically your AI-powered stuff in the LightSpark Connect and LightSpark Prime area, and really hoped this stuff would all come to fruition and work, quite frankly, and it has, and it does. And that answers the direct question of, why LightSpark for us, because it's the best solution. It's the enterprise solution and the best for Flexa.
Thank you. So switching gears a little bit, can you talk a little bit about, what are the most exciting things for both of your companies in the space we're talking about here, pun intended, for the rest of the year?
Sure.
Go for it. Go for it, Jamie.
Well, I was just going to give a little teaser. Danny and I spent a couple hours together about 2 weeks ago with a couple other folks at Flexa, really spending some time mapping out some very exciting POCs or proofs of concept that we hope to take to the market. So personally, for us to be able to build that, take it, use some of these partners. I can't share who they are yet, but I hope in the next couple of months we will have some fun announcements for you guys to really engage and interact with this with some names that everyone is familiar with.
Yeah, we are, obviously very excited about that. I've mentioned it a couple times before. I'll say it again. We've been hard at work really building over the last 2 years. So the opportunities Jamie is speaking of can be real. And what we've been working mostly on is how do we help developers of apps be able to use the Flexa network for payments with merchants. And that's where the SpendKit SDK comes back to relevance. And with that launch, and we will be speaking more about this in the near term. With that launch, we think we have a real watershed moment for payments, and combine that with the conversation Jamie just talked about, and some of the new and exciting opportunities ahead, is one of the reasons we are just super excited for 2024.
Yeah, I'll say that one of the things that is, the most exciting for us here at LightSpark is really having, a really solid developer experience that enables partners and third parties such as yourselves to extend the capabilities and experiences for very specific use cases, in this case, retail payments, but a bunch of other use cases as well. And I feel like this is just so energizing to see how you can tap into our platform and build an experience that's really tailored for the use case and the type of constituents that you serve in merchants and wallets right now, and really excited to see what you're going to do with the SpendKit SDK and everything else later this year. Um, okay, so just to close before we open up to questions, like, any hot takes for 2024? What's your prediction for digital payment space this year? Something a little controversial, maybe? Not CBDC in controversial land. Something else.
Yeah, something other than that. Well, I think, hot takes for me. One thing I've had my eye on, and I've spent personally a great deal of work on in Washington, D.C., is legislation for stablecoins. So I think my hot take, I don't know how hot it is, I think it's starting to get a bit more press, is I do think there will be stablecoin legislation this year. And for us, that's important. I mean, us, all of us collectively, I think that's super important because what we're seeing right now, I think, is private sector real energy. Obviously, there's the Bitcoin ETF. I believe there'll be an ETH ETF. I think there should be other ETFs. I think in a regulated way like that, there's no reason there shouldn't be. So there's a hot take. But I do think you combine that type of private sector energy with the public sector energy that I think will come through stablecoin legislation. That just creates the kind of momentum where conversations with institutional players, conversations with merchants become all the easier. And I think what that does is really steam progress forward in a really aggressive way. So while things can take a long time to build, I think they can be turned on quite quickly.
We should have aligned, Danny, because I was going to say the same thing about regulation. I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with both of you more around CBDC. Like Danny, I spent some time in Washington looking at what that looks like, talking to policymakers, really trying to educate and understand, help them understand, what we're trying to do and what the asks are here in the market. The other just very specific kind of hot take I'll give you is I'm kind of getting the feeling that we're going to see some of these luxury brands get in on the crypto space or digital asset space. So I wonder if they'll be one of the first to kind of adopt in a big way.
I'll add one more thing because you just triggered it, Jamie, with that. I don't know quite how to say this. I'll try to say it so it makes the most sense possible, hot take wise. I think we'll see a major brand accept crypto payments in a way that doesn't feel or look like crypto payments are being accepted. So, what does that mean? I think what we've seen in past technologies is the initial launch of the technology itself can sometimes be a bit confusing for folks, and they may not know exactly how to use it, or maybe they're scared to use it. So what's traditionally happened is technology will advance such that it is actually being used, but the user experience doesn't really grip that it's using it. I see that coming. I think a major brand will do that this year. So crypto will be used more in a back end way or more behind the scenes, and folks will seamlessly be using crypto in payments in one way or another with a major brand in 2024.
What about you, David?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about this idea that more luxury brands will start accepting payments, and it kind of makes sense. It's kind of all of these gains have to go to something, fun. But so that's good and exciting, and I think that the nice thing is. Now we've actually been able to enable in a very consistent and reliable way very large payments on top of Lightning. So, if you want to buy a fancy car or something with your Bitcoin gains, why not? Yeah, I look, I'm more seriously, I'm actually really excited for what this year will bring. It's kind of interesting because we've all been building during a bear cycle for the last couple of years, and now the winds are turning. We're going to have a lot of tailwinds again. Which is good because we've been able to build very solid technology and not be distracted in the interim, and now we're ready. And I think it's right place, right time, right opportunity, and I feel really good for what's coming. I'm really excited for the partnership and what we can deliver together in terms of new experiences in retail payments. I'm also excited in trying to figure out, what are the modalities of true internet era retail payments in terms of the ability for money to move both ways, right? It's like we didn't spend a lot of time touching on loyalty and rewards and all of these things, but it's not only consumer to merchant, but also merchant to consumers and new modalities around like how do you actually get people money based on certain actions that they will do in store or otherwise, and these types of things have been hyped and discussed for many years, but it hasn't been done because it's really hard to do on very old rails that are not real time, that are not open and interoperable, etc. So I think that's going to also be a big opportunity going forward, and I think we'll start seeing some of that this year.
David, you
I couldn't
reminded
agree
me
more.
of David, you reminded me of something else. I think another thing that we may see this year is the need for cross-border movement of value to kind of come down a level. And so I think we all talk about sort of the blockchain allowing that to happen in an easier way than what happens now. But I'm starting to see some very specific use cases in the market that could be meaningful to corporations that have to move money or individuals that have to move money around. So I've got a long view on cross-border also.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I agree with both of you on both points. And David, that's bringing up loyalty is great because that is something we've also been focused on.
Hey, Danny, is it me who can't
I'm
hear
still
Danny,
here,
or
David. Uh, I'm still here. Danny did go out though.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Well, he was
Hopefully,
saying
I'm back.
something really enthusiastic. There
Yes,
you go.
about loyalty. He's back,
Yeah,
Danny.
Danny, loyalty.
Yeah, I
We
must
lost
have
you
cut off.
there.
You know what? That's funny. I'm talking to myself and making myself excited. That's great. But no, what we've talked a lot internally about loyalty. So when we talk about digital currency payments, loyalty's in there for us. It's pre-built in there. And so what we've built at Flexa to date and what we're building for the future certainly includes that because we know merchants want and need that. And we think merchants very well may have their own tokens they want folks to be able to spend. And we're pre-built to enable that.
That's great. That's great. Well, I was going to actually share and get into a bunch of questions from people in the audience, but actually we covered every single topic that was asked in this portion. So I'm going to take this moment to thank both of you for the time on this space, and I think this was a really good conversation about what I believe is the hardest part of this evolution of payments and rails, which is really making retail payments uh, work the way they should work in 2024. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope we get to do this again at some point later this year to check on our progress.
Thank you,
Yeah.
David.
David, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And Jamie, thank you.
Always a pleasure, Danny.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.